What is C++? C++ is a cross-platform language that can be used to create high-performance applications. It was developed by Birane Astrup as an extension to the C programming language. It gives programmer a high level of control over system, resource, and memory. So why should we use C++? C++ is one of the world's most popular programming language. It can be found in today's operating systems like Windows, Mac, and Linux. Unlike the graphical user interface and also the embedded system, it is an object-oriented programming language which gives a clear structure to programs and allow code to be reused. It's portable and can be used to develop applications that can be adapted to multiple platforms. It's fun and easy to learn. So what are the differences between C and the C++? C++ was developed as an extension of C, and both languages have almost the same syntax. The main difference between C and the C++ is that C++ supported class and objects, while C does not. Now in this tutorial, I will teach you the basics of C++ and advance some topic like STL in C++. If you are a beginner, you don't need to necessarily to having the prior programming experience at all. So without any further ado, let's get started on the video. So now let's run our first hello world program in C++. So for that, what I'm going to do here, we're going to create here a new C++ file. So I'm going to click here on this button and I'm going to type here one name. Let's call main.cpp. So cpp is nothing but extension of the C++ file. So now let's run our first hello world program in C++. So for that, first you need to import here the header file, or you can say include in C++. So that's called the preprocessor command. So when the program will execute it will first load the preprocessor command in our program. So for that, you're going to use here hash include, and this preprocessor command is called the iOS stream, right? Then we need to give here one namespace. So let's say call using namespace std. Then we are going to use here the main functions. So when you run this in a C++ program, it will call this function automatically. So for that, I'm going to use here int main. Then inside that, I need to give here my statement, which one I am going to execute it. Let's say I'm going to try to print here the hello world. So in order to print it, we are going to use here one method, or you can say the functionality in the C++ that's called cout. So using this, we can actually print something inside of our console. So let's say cout the hello world, right? And now I need to give here a semicolon. It's not Python program, so that's why I need to give here semicolon must. And also you can give here on return type. So let's say return 0 right now. So if you're trying to run the code, you just need to go on here. You need to also save this file and just need to go on here and you can see the run code. I have to run this program, right? So you can see hello world is printing. If I'm trying to change something on that, so let's say hello world like that. And if I run the code and you can see hello world. Now you see, I don't save the code. It will automatically save the code because in VS Code, if I go here, you can see my auto save mode is currently on. So that's why it automatically changes, it detects the changes and after that it will save the code, right? So let's say I'm going to remove this namespace from here. I'm just going to remove that, right? So now if I'm trying to run the code, you can see here one error also. You can see here external OS stream cout. That's mean cout is nothing but coming up from the namespace. So if I'm trying to use here this like that std : and now if I'm trying to run the code, now you can see your error is gone and you can get the output, right? So that's why we need to use here as a shortcut that's called using namespace std in our C++ program, right? So now I'm going to use this one using namespace std. Now I'm going to print here the next line. Let's say I'm going to print the cout. So let's say hello world next line. So it is printing like that, next line, right? Again, semicolon, must need to keep that. And now if I run the code here, and you can see your hello world and the next line. But I'm trying to keep it after the next line. After hello world and after the next line will be printed. So for that, what I can do, I'm going to use here this AND. That's called AND line. So now if I run the code again, and you can see hello world and the next line is printed. Well, so you can run any kind of that. Let's say I'm going to just copy this and I'm going to just paste it. And now if I run the code, and you can see hello world, next line, right? So you can also print it in one single line. So let's see how can we do that. So for that, we can use here like that. So let's say next line, right? And you have to use this one, right? Now if I remove this line and if I'm trying to run the code, and you can see hello world next line, You can also give here the space on that, or you can also give here the handle. Let's say I'm going to give here one handle. Now it will, if you're trying to print it, and to go to the next line. See hello world at the next line. That's it. That's it. So now let's see how can you do the comment in C++. So for that, you can simply use this two backslash and it will comment the whole line, right? So if I run the code, it will not printing anything because it will comment these print functions, right? So that's why it's not printing anything. That's called comment. So comment is nothing but used by the developer. Let's say you are building one applications or you're building one game. You need to give here some comments uh, in order to understand the code after you are developing this same product after 6 months or the 1 year later, so you can actually understand what actually happening in this code. So that's why developer actually use this comment. So if you give here some multi-line comment, you can also do it. Let's say you have multiple lines of code. Let's say I have this one. I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to copy and paste it. Let's say I'm trying to comment out this whole line. So for that, I simply use here control and the uh, backslash on my keyboard, and it will automatically comment all the lines, right? So this is the shortcut key in the VS Code. You can also use here another technique in order to do the multi-line comment. So for that, you have to use here the backslash and you need to use the star, and then you need to also end it. So for that, you will just use this one. So now it's called the multi-line command. So if I run the code, it will not printing anything, right? So let's say I'm trying to print here, let's say see out, let's say something, right? And again handle. So it will just printing my names, right? So it's not printing the comment that is actually inside our source code. So let's go to comment. Now we're going to see the what is the variables in C++. But before discussing about the variable, we need to also know that what is data type. So in C++, there are 5 types of data types available here. Number 1 is integer, then we have the float, we have the double, and we have the bool, and also have one data type that's called string. So this is the extra data type in C++, which one is not available in C programming language if you're coming from the C programming language, right? So but if you're coming from Python, so it's not necessary, right? So let's say I'm trying to initialize here one variable. I'm just going to remove all the line here. So let's say we have 3 variables, let's call A, B, and C. So variable is nothing but the container. It will actually contain, or you can say it will actually store the value, right? So let's say I'm going to give here A equal to 12, right? So A equal to 12. So that's when A, the value of the 12 is assigned into the A. If I'm trying to print here the C out equal to A, and it will print the value that's called 12 inside the variable that's called A. So if you run the code here, you can see 12, right? So there are 4 types of integer is available in the C++. That's mean we have the integer, we have the short, we have the long, and also have the long. So this is basically depend on which types of operating system you're using or which kind of uh, program you're writing. Based on that, you can actually give you the space or memory, right? So let's say I'm going to initialize, let's say short, right? It also work. So if I run the code, it will also work. We have the long, and also you have the long, right? So if I run the code here now, then you can see 12 also printed. So this is nothing but also the integer data type. So let's say integer, and let's say again in, let's say b equal to 12, or let's say 13. And now if I'm trying to make it short, you can also do it, right? You can also do it. Let's say I'm just going to copy this, I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it here. Let's say this is for short, this is for long. So this is also the integer data type, right? So let's say long. So this is unlike the similar in also the float, I mean floating point number. So let's say you are initially the same thing, let's say floating point number. So let's say call float. So in the float, it's also available, let's say float and the double and the long double, like that, right? So let's say I'm trying to make it double. Let's say double. Again, fine. We can make this, let's say long double. You can also make it, right? Well, it also happening. So we have the another data type that's called the string. So let's say I'm trying to add here one name. Let's say string name equal to, let's say my name, let's say Chando, right? So again, if I'm trying to print my name, so I can also print it. Let's say I'm going to print it here. So this is the extra data type in C++, right? So if I'm trying to run the code, okay, we have some error. So operator match this operand. Okay, okay, let's run the code and see. Okay, we have the long double. Okay, it is actually happening because we give here the same variable name at a time. So that's why it gave me the error, right? So how you actually initialize here the variables, right? In order to think that the variable name must be following some rows. You cannot give here the number after the variable. Let's say if I am give here one number, it will not counting as a variable, right? You can see here we got here some error because this is not the actual way to identify one variable or declare a variable. We can use here the underscore, but you cannot use here the letter, or you cannot use here any special character uh, in order to declare one variables. So it also give me the error because I give the same name of the three variable names. So that's what actually give me the error. So now if I actually delete this code, and if I am trying to run the code right now, and you can see we don't get any error, right? It also print my name, right? So it will actually happening that you cannot give here the same name of the variable. So let's say I'm going to give here some extra name. Let's say I'm just going to make this a should be capital, or here a should be capital. Now it's not, it don't give me any error because it is case sensitive. When you're trying to give here any variable name, it must be case sensitive, right? So this is the declaration of how can you declare one variables in C++. So well, if I forget one thing or one important thing, let's say you're trying to give here one long variable name. Let's say I'm going to give here one declare variable called math in CPP. Let's say equal to let's say you are past. So this is one string, right? So let's say past. Okay, past, and let's make this should be string, right? String. Well, so let's say I'm trying to access this math in CPP. So how can I actually access this? Or you can type it, right? So if you type it, it will take time, right? It will take 1 second or 2 seconds, right? So you can also use here on shortcut technique in the VS Code. Let's say I'm going to use here the MIC, and you can see math in CPP. It automatically suggests me, right? So this is called actually camel case notation, right? So this is called a camel case notation. So in order to, using this, actually you can actually declare more long types of variables in a shorter way. Just you need to use this shortcut command, and you can actually give here the variable name in a long way, right? So that's one technique also, right? So well, so now we need to see that how can it take the input from the users. So I'm just going to comment out all the lines. So we actually give here the value manually. So let's say I'm taking the input from the users. So let's say we have a variable called a, and I'm going to take the input. So for that, I'm going to use here the cinin, and I'm going to assign it inside my variable that's called a. Now if I'm trying to print it, let's say print a. So now if I run the code, and you can see on the console, the value of a is not printing anything, right? It will take an input. So now if I give it 12, it will print the 12. Let's say I'm going to give it some comment. Let's say the input number is, let's say this like that. Okay, and I'm also give here one and then. Okay, now you run the code here, and let's say I am going to give here 13, and you can see the input number is 13. You can also give here the entire input like that. So for that, you need to just use this one, this kind of way. I'm just going to paste it, and this is a C out. So this is obviously like that. So let's say input your number, or enter your number. Enter your number like that. So it will actually printing this first line, and after that it will take in the input, and then it will printing it. So let's say enter your numbers. So let's say 67, enter, and the input number is 67. So this is how you can take the input from the users, right? You can use this simple technique called cin, right? So that's so easy to take the input. You can also take the input in a single line also. So let's say I'm trying to take the input a and also the b, and also I'm trying to print it. So let's say b, and also like that. So I am going to, what I can do, I am going to same use this a and b. So let's say enter two number, right? Enter two number. So now I'm going to run the code. Yeah. So let's say enter two number. Let's say I'm going to give here 12, another one is called 30. So if I run this, and you can see here 12 and 30, I don't have any space because I don't give here a space, so that's why. Or we can also give here handle. So for that we can use here the handle, right? So now the error is gone. So if you run the code here and enter two number, so let's say 34 and 45, and you can see the input number is 34 and 45, right? So this is how you can take the multi line input. Okay, in the multiple input you can take in a single line, and you can also take the input in a single line also, right? So this is how you can take the input in C++. Well, so now we're going to build here one simple calculator and also discuss about the operators in C++. So let's take two input from the users. So now what we're going to do here, we're going to simply use a cout statement, and we are going to add two numbers. So let's say using the cout statement, and first one is called the addition, right? And we are going to add two numbers, so a and b, that you're taking input from the users. Then we have the handle. So again, I'm just going to copy this out, right? And I'm going to paste it here, right? And I'm trying to make this minus, and it should be the into, and it should be the divide, right? So this should be the, okay, let's make it minus, this should be into, this should be the divide, and this should be the pause, right? We are going to add two numbers, so you make the one simple calculator, right? So let's run the code. So enter two numbers. So let's say I'm going to give here 12 and the 12. So you can see we got the answer, right? So we have plus equal to 24, we have minus equal to 0, and we have into equal to 144, and divide is nothing but 1. So that's the answer, right? So let's say I'm just going to make this one like that, and like that, and we can also give here, let's say, addition. So this is called add, then this is minus, so this is called sub, so this is called multiplication, it's called mul, and let's say this is called dip. Well, now let's run the code here again, and now let's give it two number, let's say 5 and the 10, right? So you can see here additions is 15, and subtractions is nothing but minus 5. Then multiplication and division we got here 0. Why 0? Because maybe we need to get some floating point number, but we got here 0. Why? Because this is the integer number, and the value is coming up in integer format. So for that, what I'm going to do here, we need to convert them into the floating point number. So that's called typecasting, right? So that's called typecasting. So now if I am trying to run the code and again give here the same number that I gave before, now you can see I got here 0.5 as the output. So this is called typecasting, how you're trying to cast the data type from, let's say you're casting from integer to the float, I mean the conversions. You can use this typecasting format in C++ so that you can get the answer, right? So this is the 0, we got it, how you don't typecast it, and after that we got here 0.5, I mean our correct answer. You can also make sure with the double. You can also do that if I run the code again and give here, let's say again 5 and 10, and you can see you got here the same number and float and the doubles. You can also give here the long double or like that, right? So that's it about the operators in C++. Now we're going to discuss about the if and the else conditional statement. Let's take one example. Let's say you wanted to board, right? You wanted to board, and you is right now you are 21 years old. Now we're going to check that you are able to board or not. So for that, we're going to take the input from the user, right? Let's int age equal to, we're going to take the input from the user. So for that, let's int in, and we're going to give the input from the users. Now you're going to check that if, and inside that you're to give here the conditions. So let's say this is to call conditions. Then we have our statement. So we have our statement, right? Then we have our else block, and else block don't have any condition, and the statement, right? Like that. So this is the building block of the if else conditional statement in C++. So you need to keep here the condition. So let's say if the age is greater than 18, you are able to vote. Let's say I'm going to give here C out. Okay, this should be the after, let's say C out equal to you can vote, right? So let's say you can vote, like that, and otherwise you can vote, cannot vote, right? So you cannot vote. Let's say you can vote and you cannot vote. Okay, one more thing. Let's say I'm trying to remove this. I'm going to remove this, and let's make it handle. Just I'm going to show you one shortcut technique. So let's say you are typing here the same types of text in it 2 times. So how can you do that? You just click here and you have to click Alt button on your keyboard and you have to press here. Now you can see two cursor. Let's say you can vote, right? Simple technique. Now you can make this should be cannot vote. Well, save it, and now if I run the code, and if I go here, let's say I need to give here one age. Let's say I'm going to give here 21. Okay, let's say 21. So you can see it, you can vote. Let's say I'm going to give here another number. Let's say I'm going to give here, let's say 500. Now you can say you can vote, but the problem is a people or a person cannot live like 500 years, right? So for that, what I can do here, we can also give here one conditions. So you have to keep here another condition. You can use here else if you're trying to add more condition. Let's say if the age is greater than 500. So that's when this called invalid age. Your age is not correct, right? So you can give here one message, you, or let's say invalid age. Well, then we're going to handle. Well, so now if I'm run the code, and now if I'm going to give here 400, oh shit, you can vote. How it possible? It's not execute this whole command, right? Why? Because it will first check this command, and after that, I mean, it will check this condition, and after that, it will come back, right? But the problem is, it will check that if it is greater than 18 or not. So that's why the 400 is greater than 18. So that's why it actually gave me this statement, you can vote. It's not checking the rest of them. So that's why if I trying to make this should be valid, we need to make this condition upper them. So I'm just going to cut them, and I need to make this up, and I have to just remove this, and I need to make this should be else if. Now if I run the code here, and if I'm trying to give here input, let's say 400, now you can see here you can vote. Okay, okay, this should be the 500 up, right? So if I give here 600, okay, embedded age. So let's say I'm going to give here age should be, let's say 100. So let's say now if I run the code here, let's say if I go here 101, so you can see here embedded age, or that like that, if the age is negative, you can also vote. So for that, you can use here some operator that's called or operator. If the age is less equal to 0, right, you cannot also vote. Let's say I'm give here one minus 10 as is. So minus 10 cannot be age, right? So that's called invalid age, right? So this is all about the if and the else conditional statement in C++. This is super easy, right? So now we are going to discuss about the Swiss case. So let's say I'm going to take one age from the users. So let's say in, and let's age, and also give here one message. Let's enter your age. So let's enter your age, right? So the user actually give here the input. Now I have to check that. Let's say user give here 18. So I need to show that user give here the 18. I mean, you are 18 years old. Let's say user give 15. You are 15 years old. Let's say user give here 20. So you are 20 years old, right? Otherwise, you are not neither 18 or neither 15 or neither 20. So I'm just taking the example like that. So let's say I'm going to use here the Swiss case. So how the switch case actually looks like. You need to use here the switch statement, and you need to use here the expressions and have some case and also and default block, right? So the expression is nothing but our age that I am taking from the users. So this is nothing but my age. And after that, what I'm gonna do here, I need to give here one case. So let's say my case is nothing but 18. That's been 18. So I'm going to print here, let's say see out you are 18. Let's say. Then if you are, let's say the case, let's say case, this case should be, let's say this case, you are 15, right? So you need to also use here the bracket statement. Then let's say you are 20, right? I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here. Again, one more thing again. We're using here the shortcut, right? So 20. So use here I'm going to also copy this statement, this statement here and also here, right? And now what I'm going to do here, I am just going to use here the shortcut. I just click here and use the alt and again alt and again alt. Let's say you are now, let's say you are 18 years old, right? Years old, right? And let's make this 15 and let's say make this 20. Now the default case is, that mean if the any case is not matches and default block is automatically called. So see out. So let's say you are neither 18 or 50 or 20. Well, to keep it also the semicolon. So you can also use the format document in order to format this code, and this code will automatically format it out, right? So now if I run the code here and relaxing enter US, so let's say I'm going to give here 18. So you can see here you are now 18 years old. Let's say give here again, enter your age. Let's say I'm going to give you 22. So you can see here you are neither 18 or 15 or 20, right? So this is how switch case actually work. But if I remove this bracket statement from here, just remove this bracket statement, see what is actually happening here. So I get a 23. So you can see here your age is nothing but 23. You are neither 18 or the 15 or the 20. Let's say I also run the code here again, and I gave here age should be 18. Now you can see here you are now 18 years old and you are now 15 years old. It will actually execute the next line also. So the bracket statement actually help you when the case is executed, then it will actually count out of the switch case. So that's why the break statement is actually used on the switch case also. So this is about the switch case. This is super easy, right? So I need to check the statement in the multiple statement. You can use the switch case. So now let's discuss about the loop in C++. So we have three loops are available in our C++: for loop, then we have our while loop, and another one is called the do while loop, right? So we are going to be discussing about all of them. So now I'm going to comment out. First, discuss about the for loop. So let's say in order to create here on loop using for, you need to use here the for keyword, and this is the actual building block of the for loop. So how it looks like. So first part is called the initialization part. Then it have the conditional part, and it have the increment and the decrement part, and you have the statement which you are going to execute. So well, let's take your example. Let's say I'm going to print from 1 to 10. So how can you print them? Maybe you taking the 10 variable, and after that you're going to put here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 like that. Let's say I'm going to give you the 100. So you can also make that, right? Let's say give it 1000. Now you can, how can you make that? You are making the 1000 variables, and after that you can just create here one simple program, right? So it's not so easy to do that. So in order to do that, you can use the loop, right? See how can you do that. So see, in the for loop we have the initialization part. So initialization part, you can need to initialize here the variable value where you are going to start. So you can see a size t. This is nothing but our data type. So let's say I'm going to give here int 0, and I'm going to start from 1, and I need to go for after 101. After that, it will back the loop. It will automatically stop the loop. Now it will, this is called the increment part. So now if I'm trying to print it, if I'm trying to print the I, and now you can see it will printing the 1 200, right? See, 1 200, right? That's super easy using loop, right? Let's say I'm taking the sum of 1 to 10. How can I do that? Let's take one simple variable that's called sum. So here you're going to store that. Now you're going to just simply make this sum equal to sum plus I, right? Then after that you're going to print this statement. Just print this statement here. So you're going to print the sum. Now the sum is stored, right? So I'm going to add from 10 to, let's say, 4. So 1 to 4 is nothing but 10. So this should be 1 equal. So you can see here, okay, this is not like that. This is the greater less equal. So you can see here 10, right? You can also print it out. So in order to print them, you have to same use here the statement. Let's say this one, and I'm going to make it 1, right? And now if you run the code, and you can see here 1 2 3 4, and after that you're making the 10, right? Simple, really very simple. So this is how you can actually use here the summations of one simple list. So now let's see how can you use the while loop. The same program that you're going to do is using the while loop. How can I do that? So for that you have to use here the uh, keyword that's called the while, right? And inside that you have to give it the conditions and also the code. So the condition is nothing but this one. Let's say I'm going to give here the conditions. So I'm just going to pass the same condition, right? Same condition that I'm going to pass, and the code. Let's say I'm going to pass it the same code, right? Same code, this one. Now it will give me error because I don't initialize the variable at all. So that's what gave me the error. Simple, right? So let's say I need to initialize int I equal to 0, I equal to 1. I'm going to start from 1. Say this is the initialization part. The initialization part of the for loops is you have to give here inside the bracket, but in the while loop it will be the out of your bracket. And that's when in the while keyword you need to pass here the condition, and after that you need to give here the statement or your code. So now let's take the variable is called sum. So initially I am going to pass here 0, and now if I'm trying to print it out, okay, I think the program will be crash. Okay, yes, the program will be crash because see, we give here the initialization part and also the condition part, but we don't give here the increment or the decrement part. So how can I do that? So we can use here after that, after the statement, right? So now if I run the code, if I run the code, and now you can see 1 to 10, I mean 1 to 4 is equal to 10. Again, I can use here the statement, this I statement, right? And I'm going to make this one, and if I run the code, you can see just 1 2 3 4, and it will printing the 10. So the same code that you're going to do in for loops, you also do it in the while loops, right? So now the question is, how can I do it in a do and while loop, right? I mean do while loop. It's also same as the while loop, but uh, just having some different of that, right? So well, I'm going to comment out the lines, and I'm going to use here the do while loop. So for that, the do, you need to use the keyword called do, and now you can see here you need to keep pass the condition on the while block. So again, I'm just going to copy these conditions, copy these conditions. I pass the conditions. Now you can see here code. So I need to also initialize it after that. Let's say int I equal to 0. See, in the while loop, you are giving the increment and decrement part inside a curly bracket. But in the do while, you need to pass this increment and decrement code inside your do. I mean do block you need to keep here. So if I'm trying to print the sum, I need to also pass it inside my do. I mean do block, not the while block. So first it will actually execute the do, and after that it will actually checking the conditions, right? So now I need to also initialize here the sum should be the 0. So I'm going to come from 1, and now if I am trying to run the code, okay, it printing from 1 to 4, that's fine. Now I'm going to print the sum. Let's say I'm going to print the sum. I'm going to just make copy and paste it here. Now you can see 1 to 4 is nothing but 10. Simple, super simple. So this is about the for loop, do while loop in C++, right? So now we are going to discussing about the array in C++. So what is actually array? So array is nothing but one kind of linear data structure where you can store some values, right? So in array, you can store the same data type value. It cannot store different types of value in array. So in order to initialize one array, first you need to give the data type and your array name, and also you need to give it the size. So let's say I'm going to give it the size should be the 4, and you can also initialize the value of the array in using one curly bracket. So let's say I'm going to give it 1, 2, 3, comma 4, right? So so this is how you can actually initialize here one array in C++, right? So now inside that the 4 value is stored, right? And also the array index is start from 0. If I'm trying to print the index number 0, so let's see out array index number 0, and if I'm trying to print it out, and it will show me 1 as the output, right? So you can see 1. If I try to print here the 2, and you can see 3, right? Because 0, 1, 2, and the 3, it will print the index number 2. You can also use here on loop in order to print this whole value inside our array. So let's say print int I equal to 0, and I start from 0 to length of the array. So length of the array is nothing but 4, then I plus plus, and if you're trying to print it out, you just need to simply print the array with index number I. Then it will give you the output that is available inside your array. So now if I run the code here, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 that is available inside my array. If I make some changes on that and run the code, you can see 1, 2, 5, and the 4. So this is how you can initialize one array in C++. Let's say I'm taking the input from the users, right? And after that I'm going to save it inside my array. This is how you can see we actually gave it the value in the manual, right? We can also take the input from the user. So that's what I'm talking about. So let's say I'm give here the size of the array is nothing but 4. Now I'm going to take the input from the users. So let's say, so you have to take the input from the user. So you're going to use here the cin. Then we are going to store it inside our array based on the index. We'll take 4 values in our array. Then what I'm going to do here, we can give here one statement. Let's say enter your number. So let's enter your number. And if I'm trying to run the code, and you can see enter your number. Let's say I'm going to give you 12. Then let's say 34, 56, that is 78, and it will take the input correctly, no error. So now if I'm trying to run the try to print it out, so for that what I'm going to do here, I'm going to use the same code. I am just going to make this cin should be the cout, so that it will print the statement. So let's say andl, and I am also going to remove this line, right? Because I don't need it right now. Okay, so now if I am trying to run the code, okay, we need to make this like that, so then it will work because it is a cout statement. So now if I run the code here again, enter your number. So let's say give here 12, 45, 67, let's say 56. So you can see here it is printing all the values, right? It will printing all the values. Well, 56, no, 56 is not 12, 45, 67, and 56. So all the number is printed. So how can you take the input from the users using the array, right? You can also use here another technique in order to print the array's value. So for that, what you can do, you can use here the for each loop also in order to printing the value. So let's say or2 I in, let's say, inside the array. So now let's see, check that out, it is working here or not. Okay, same, it will work. 12, 34, 56, 78. I don't know it working or not. Yep, it will working, but it gave me some mismatch value. So well, it actually gave me the mismatch value because I print here the array of I. I need to print the I because the value of the array is stored inside right now I. This is called the iterative process, right? So if I run the code here again, this is actually happening because it's not getting the index, right index here, right? Because we give here 45, 67, 56, that's the index. So that's it's not printing out, right? So if I am keep the input again, let's say like that, and now you can see print the value correctly, right? You can also use this for is statement in order to printing the value inside our array, right? So this is how you can use the array in C++. Right? Now we're going to be discussing about the data type that's called a string in C++. So I'm going to comment out these lines also. So let's take one variable that's called string name equal to, let's say, my name. I just going to give it to my name, right? So if I'm trying to print it out, we can use the cout statement, and then we can give here my name and endl simply, right? So now if I run the code here, and you can see here Chandu is printed, right? So now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to check the length of the name. So how can I do that? For that, I'm going to use here name.length. So if I am trying to save and try to run the code, you can see here the length of the name. So let's say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 5, right? 0 to 5, it's 6 numbers. So that's the length is 6, right? So you can also print here the substring of the string that is the name. So if I'm trying to print the substring of that, so let's say I'm trying to print from C to A, right? So how can I print that? So I can use here another technique that's called names dot substring, and inside that I need to pass here two values as argument. So number was the first index, so I'm going to start from 0 and I'll go from 2. That's mean 0, 1, and the 2, and it's printing the cha. Yes, okay, it's printing the chi is, right? So that's mean it will go 0 to 1. It's not printing, but it will go from 0 to 1. And if you give here 3, so it will give here, it will go from cha, I mean 0 to 3. So that's mean 0, 1, and 2, right? So it will printing the 3 element on the string, I mean 3 character from the string, right? So this is how the string is working on C++. So this is all about the basics in C++. Now we're going to be discussing about the advanced topic like standard template library. It's called STL. We are going to be discussing about the stack, QE, then we have the periodic tree, maps, and so on, right? So now let's go on that. So now we are going to be discussing about the STL, let's call the standard template library in C++. Let's say you are preparing yourself for an interview or a placement or the competitive programming. Let's say interviewer asks you one questions where you need to apply the binary search. Now you have limited time, you need to also do the coding for that. Now what do you actually do here? You write the whole code for the binary search? Obviously no. For that you can use here the STL, that's called external template library in C++. Using this library, it will take 5 or 10 seconds to actually import it. And after that, you can get the results. So that's called the STL in C++. Now we are going to be discussing here various STL library in C++ like array, vector, stack, QE, set, map, and some STL algorithm like short, binary search, maximum, minimum, like that, right? So now let's discuss about the array one. How can you create here one static array using STL library? So for that, what we need to do here, so we need to import, or you can say include the array in our CPP file. So let's say we are using the array. So this array, so you need to also import it. So for that, what you can do, you can simply use here hash include. This one is called the array, right? So it will include this library on your C++ program. Now you need to use here the array keyword that I am using here, and after that you need to give here the data type, which data type that you're going to use here, and the size of the array. So this array is nothing but one static array in C++, right? So now let's say give here one variable name that's called a. Now inside that I'm going to pass here the value, let's go at 1 2 3 4. So this is the mostly similar on the array in the C++. Let's say you're creating an array like that, 4, or let's say 4 equal 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 4. So like that you are creating an array, so both are same. So this is the by default syntax in C++, and this is the STL format in C++. How can you initialize an array, right? So if I try to print it out, let's say I'm going to print here cout, right? I'm going to print the cout a, and if I try to print here the handle, and now if I run the code here, see the output, it is working or not. Let's see. Okay, it's giving me some error, right? You cannot print it, right? So for that, you need to use here one iterative process in order to printing this down, right? So for that, what I can do here, we are going to use here the for loop as the iterator. So this is one string value. No, it is one integer value, not a string value. So that's why we're going to iterate to the value from the a to, let's say, I. I'm just going to iterate that, right? And after that, what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to print it. So let's say C out, and I'm going to use here a, and inside the index value, and I'm going to use here the handle. Well, so now if I am trying to run the code, and it will probably give me the value, right? 2, 3, 4 at the 1, right? So it actually give me the value. uh, in some way, it will actually iterate to the value from here, right? And to give me the value answer, right? So if I actually remove this line and again run the code, and you can see 2, 3, 4, and 4. Okay, so I think there's something is missing out here. So if I'm trying to make this should be the O2, and if I'm trying to make this should be the I. So you can say 2, 3, 4, 4. So what actually happening here, it's not actually printing the index, right? So for that we are going to use here the I, because the I value is actually getting inside the I. So that's why it's not giving the actual output, it's just give me the index number. So that's why it's giving me the error. So if I run the code here again, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. So first time when I actually print this code, see, so it will actually just checking the value, and it will go on the A, and based on the index value, it actually return me the 2, 3, 4, 4 like that. So that's why you got this error, right? So now you can see here, if I remove this, we just use here the I. So this is called the for each loop. So now you can see here I print here 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, right? So if I change something on here, let's say I'm going to give here 5. See, 5. Now if I run the code here, say you can't give here the 5. You can see here too many initializers, because I actually initialize the value as a 5. I mean the size of the array is 5, 4. So that's why it's giving the error, and that's why the array is static. You can't give here the maximum number of value. So in order to actually remove this problem, we can use here another data structure in C++, or you can say STL library in C++, that's called vector, right? So now let's do some operations on that. First, we can operate some technique. Let's say call, you can check the size of that. So let's say I'm going to use here cout dot size. So we can check the size too, right? So if I'm trying to run the code here, and you can see you got the size. Okay, it's better we can comment out this line so that you can see the size correctly, right? So the size is nothing but 4. You can see the size is nothing but 4. So you can also check that the based on the positions, you can also check that. So for that you can use here add. So using add method, you can also check that the value based on the index number. So if I go here 2, so on the index number 2, it have the value of the 3, right? So 0, 1, and 2. So that's why you got the value as a 3. This is the index number, right? So we have another method that's called front, and another method is called back. So this front is actually give here the front value of your array. So let's say front, and the back will actually give you the back value, right? So let's say I'm going to just make this back, right? So also try to give here, okay, this is one method. So I need to also give here the bracket. So you can see here the 3, 1, and the 4. So you can also give here the comment. So let's say I'm going to give here, let's say this is nothing but our size, right? So now if I run the code here, and you can see size is something like 4, and we find 2 as a the index number 2 is nothing but 3. That's a value. Okay, find value. You can say value. Then the front value is nothing but 1, and the rear, or you can say back, is nothing but our 4. Okay, that's working fine. So that's the basic of the array in uh, C++, right? So we got some error here. Okay, we got. Okay, so this is all about the array in C++ from the STL array. So this is one static array, right? You can change the size based on that. So in order to change this size, we can use here the vector. Okay, so vector is automatically increase the size of the array, right? So now let's see how can we use it in our C++ program. So in order to use it, we need to also include here. We need to include here the vector. Okay, so this is the library that you need to include, that's called vector. So So what are the basic difference between the array and the vector? So the basic difference between the array and vector is you array size is nothing but dynamic, and the so vector size is nothing but dynamic, but the array size is static. So that's why if you're trying to deal with more amount of data, you can actually use the vector, right? Or you are, if you are dealing with the static data, you can use the array, right? So let's say I have a vector. So how can you initialize it? You can use this vector, and then you need to give it your data type. So let's say I'm going to give you the data type as the integer, and I need to give you the vector name. So let's say b as a vector name. Now, in order to push the value inside your vector, see how I actually insert the value in our array, we actually use these curly brackets, right? We actually use the curly brackets. So you can also do it in this case, but it's better you can use the method that's available inside the vector. So let's say if I'm trying to use the push, so you can use the pushback method inside your vector. So let's say I'm going to push back here 1, right? 1. And now if I'm trying to copy and I'm going to paste it again, let's say I kind of make this should be 2 and 3, then we have the 4, right? So now if I'm trying to print it out, so it's mostly similar to the array, right? So for that, what I can do, you can use the same iterative formula in order to get the value from here, or you can also access the value based on the index number. So let's say if I'm trying to access the value index number 0, so you can also do this way. That's you're doing in array, right? So let's handle, and I'm going to run the code, and you can see we got the values 1. That's the index number 0. So you can also use the for loop, right? So for that, I'm going to use this for 2, and I is going from the B, and then I'm going to out the I and the handle. Well, so this is how the vector is actually work, right? If I run the code here, okay, we got the error because I need to give here the 2. Now if I run the code, now you can see the 4, right? It actually printing this one, the 4 value that is available inside our vector, 1, 2, 3, and the 4. Okay, so you can also check the capacity of the vector. So I'm just going to comment out this line, and if I'm trying to check the capacity, so capacity, you can also do that, the capacity of the vector. See, one important thing, right? That you can see the capacity of the vector is nothing but the 4, right? So if I am trying to increase it, let's say I'm trying to increase it, let's say I'm going to make this 5 right now. And if I try to run the code, and you can see the capacity is nothing but 8. Why it's actually happening? The capacity should be the 5, right? But in the vector, you can see the capacity is nothing but 8. Because the vector, how I actually initialize one vector, the capacity is increased by double, increases by doubles. So that's why that's the basic difference between the array and the vector. So how I actually initialize one vector, this size is automatically double, right? If you make this, let's say I'm going to give it 6. So if I run the code here, and you can see the size is nothing but 8, right? Now 8. Okay, if I actually again make it 7, so now you can see just one thing, the capacity should be in the double format. Okay, again it's not happening. Again, if I try to make this, if the vector is full, see one thing, if the vector is full, now the 8 vector is full, you can see again 8. So if I'm trying to push another value, so let's say I'm going to push a 9, see one thing, that's very important, that's very interesting, right? So you can see here now 16, right? So how the capacity is short fold, right? In array, you can't actually give here any value. Let's say you have the 4 size, you cannot give here the value of the 5. You cannot add them, right? But in vector, when the capacity is finished, right? You don't have any space, but in the vector, it automatically taking the space in by default in a double way. Now you can see here 16. We have the 8. Now it's actually converted to 16. So this is how the capacity actually works. So if I trying to print the size of that, right? If you're trying to print the size of that, so you can also do that. So for that, you need to use here the p dot size. Now you can see here the capacity is nothing but 16, and the size is nothing but 9, right? That's mean in order to check the size of the vector, that's how many value are available inside the vector. You can use here the b dot size, right? So you can also use here the add operations that you do in the array also. So let's say I'm going to use here the add. So b dot add. Now if I'm trying to give here 2, so you can see here the index number 2 is value is nothing but 3, right? You can also use the front and the back that you do in array also. See again. So let's say I'm trying to use here the front. Okay, that's the front. and also I have the back. So let's call back, right? If I try to run the code, and you can see the front value is nothing but 1 and the back value is nothing but 9, right? So this is how actually vector is actually work. So you can also, you can see we push back the value, we can also pop back, right? We can also delete the value from vector. So let's see, I'm going to remove the value. Okay, now capacity, I am going to remove the value. Let's say C out, and for that I'm going to use here the b dot pop back. So it will pop the last element of the vector. And if I'm trying to use here the handle again, handle, and now if I'm check the size and the capacity, so see one more thing. Okay, after that, so I'm also going to comment out these lines. So this is the first time. First it will check the capacity, and after that it will pop back. Okay, I got some error, right? Well, so the error is coming because you cannot print the pop back. It will actually pop the value, right? So that's why it's one function. It's not you can actually print it out. So also make sure to use the semicolon. So now you can see here 16 the capacity, and 9 is the size. Now you can see the size is decreases. And now you can see 8. So if I using here again and again, let's say again pop back, again pop back, again pop back. So it will pop back the value for the 4 times, and the size will be decreases. You can see here the 5 right now. Okay, so this is how you can also push and the pop on the vector. So you can also use here the for loop in order to push the value inside your vector. So how can you do that? So for that you can use here the for, and you can use here one loop. So let's say I equal to 0, and I'm going to take the, let's say 5 value, right? And I'm going to use here the b dot push back, and I'm going to use here the value that I am taking from the users. So let's say I'm going to taking one variable, let's call inp input, and I'm going to take it from the user. So let's see in inp, right? And simply I'm going to pass it inside my vector, right? And after that I can also print it. So if I'm copy and I am going to paste it, so also try to comment out those lines. Okay, I'm going to comment out those lines because we push the value manually, right? So now we're going to check the capacity of that, and this is how we can check the capacity of the vector, right? So let's also comment out those lines. Well, now fine. So we taking the input from the users, uh, 0 to 4 and 5 values we have. Then you're going to print it out and also check the capacity and the size, right? So let's run the code here right now. So let's keep here value. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 5. So we have the 5 value that we taking from the users. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it will also print it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the capacity is nothing but 8, and the size is nothing but the 5. That's mean it had the 5 element, right? So this is how you can take the input from the users, and you can push back inside the vector, right? So now our next STL library is called the stack, right? So now our next STL library is called the stack, right? So stack is a one kind of data structure. So which one follow the LIFO technique, right? Lost in, first out. Let's take an example. So let's say you have 4 books. Now I'm going to put it inside your shelf. So we have 4 books. So let's say this is a book number 1, and this is the book number 2, this is the book number 3, then this is a book number 4, right? So this is a 1, this is a 2, this is a 3, this is the 4. See how I actually put the value. The top value, the number 1 book, is go to the down of the stack, right? And the last value, I mean last book, is go to the top. So this is how actually stack actually work. So the first value you actually put here, it will go to the down, right? The last value that you're going to push, it will go to the top of the stack. So this is how stack is actually work. So if let's say we have one vector 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 4, if you push it inside the vector, you can get this value in the reverse order. You can get the value like that, 4 3 2 1. So this is how you can also use the stack in order to reverse one vector, right? Now we're going to check that how can you use it on our C++ program. In order to use the stack, you need to also include it. So for that, hash include, and the library name is called the stack, right? So in order to use this stack in your program, you need to use here the keyword that's called the stack. So let's say stack, and you need to give it the data type. And again, I got actually do the same thing again and again. And you need to give it the name of the stack. So let's say s. So now if I'm trying to push the value into the stack, I can use the method that's called as.push. Simple, as.push. If I'm trying to push here the value. So let's say I'm going to push here 1 in my stack. So again, I'm going to push here 2 and the 3 as well. So let's say 2 and the 3. So now I can check the size of the stack. So for that, I can use here the cout as dot size. So this is how you can check the size of your stack. Let's handle. Now if I'm trying to run the code, and you can see my size is nothing but 3. That's mean we have 3 value inside our stack. You can also check that your stack is empty or not. So this is how you can check. So again, as dot empty. So it will actually give here the two value, I mean the boolean value 0 and 1. So if you give here 0, that's mean stack is not empty. If it give me the 1, that's mean the stack is empty. If you're trying to remove all the value, so now the stack is empty. So obviously to give me the value as 1. You can see the value as 1. That's mean the stack is empty. You don't have any values. And the size is not but 0, right? So you can push the value like that. That's dot push. So how can I pop the value? So let's say I'm going to pop the value from here. So let's say s dot pop. So this is how you can pop the value. So it will pop the top of the stack. I mean top value of the stack, right? So if I am trying to copy this and I'm going to paste it here, now the size is nothing but 3. So how can I pop one value from the stack? So to pop the top value of the stack, then we can got the value as a uh, 2, right? So let's run the code. You can see here 3 is nothing but my size, and a stack is not empty, and we pop the value from here. So now size is converted into 2. That's when we have 2 value. So now you can also check that the top value of the stack. So how can you check that? So you can use here s.top. So this is how you can check the top value of the stack, because stack is following the technique that's called LIFO technique. So that's why you need to use here the top in order to check that. So I'm going to paste it here. So high end we push the value. So we have 1, 2, and the 3. So after checking the top, we get the 3 as an output. Size should be 3, and the empty is nothing but false. So if I run the code here, and you can see 3 is nothing but my top value. The size is 3, empty is not. Now you can see here the top value is nothing but 2, because we actually remove the first element of the stack. So that's why we got the value as 2, right? And size is also decrement. You can see size is nothing but 2, and the stack is not empty. So this is how you can check the top value of the stack, right? So you can also use here one iterative method in order to uh, actually access all the value from the stack. So how can you do that? You can also hear one while loop. So let's see how can I check that. Let's say while st dot empty. So while the st is not empty, we are going to keeping through this loop, right? You're going to keeping through this loop. After it will actually force the condition should be break, and the condition should be false. It will automatically break the loop, right? So let's say I'm going to get the top value as dot top. Then I'm going to pop the value as dot pop. Then I'm going to print it here, right? So how can I do that? So cout. Let's say I'm going to print the a that I am taking. So now if I am trying to give you the handle, and if I'm trying to remove all the lines, or you can say comment out all the lines. So now if you run the code here, so you can see we got the value 3 to 1, right? So this is how you can print the stack value. I mean inside the stack value, how can you print it? So this is one technique. So make sure that just note it down, right? Because it will help you on the competitive programming also, right? So now I'm going to check that the another data structure or another STL library is called the QE. So this is the opposite of the stack. So stack is following the last in first out, but the QE is following the technique that's called first in first out, right? So now our next STL library is called the QE, right? So this is also one data structure. So which one follow the technique that's called the FIFO. So FIFO means fast in, fast out. So let's take one example. So let's say we are going to collecting the ticket of the bus or the train. So the first person is come to get the ticket at the first. Let's say this is one row. So the first person, the second person, the third person, and the fourth person. So the first person taking the ticket for the first time at the first, right? Then two, then three, then the four. That's mean if you go first, you can get the ticket at the first. Otherwise, not, right? So this is how the QE actually work. Now we're going to use this QE STL library in the C++ and we're going to implement it and with the method, right? So let's go on that. Okay, I'm going to comment out those lines and I'm also comment this. And now I'm going to import, or you can say include here, hash include the QE, right? So in order to initialize the QE, it's mostly similar to the stack. So let's say QE, and again to give here the data type, let's say Q, right? So if you're trying to push here the any value, you can use your same technique that's called Q.push. So let's say 1, then I'm going to just copy this and I'm going to paste here, right? And let's say I'm going to give here 2, then I have the 3, then I have the 4, right? If I try to check the front value of the QE, so how can I do that? So for that I'm going to use here the cout. So let's say q.front. So this is how you can check the front value. So in the stack it should be the top, but in QE there should be the front. So if I run the code here and the front value is 1.1, because this is following the first in first out. The first value is the 1, so it actually go the first, and the front value is nothing but 1. You can also check the size of the QE. So how can you check that? Again, so this is how you can check. So you can use here the size. So again, if I run the code here, and you can see size is 24. I mean, that's mean we have the 4 values. So you can again use the q.pop. So this is how you can pop the value. Now if I copy this and if I'm trying to paste here, and you can also use the format document, it will automatically format this statement. Okay, it did not format it clearly, right? Okay, let's run the code. Okay. Sometime it's not giving the proper result, right? So now let's run the code here. So again, okay, the semicolon is missing. Okay, now you can see here the 2 and the 3. So 2 is nothing but the front value because we pop the value for the first time, and the first value is gone. Now second value is the nothing but my top, I mean the front, and the size is nothing but 3. Now you can see size the 4. Now it's actually decreasing the 1. So that's why it's now 3, right? So this is how you can actually push the element inside the stack. How can you check the size? How can you check the front element? And also you can check the back element also, right? So how can you check that? You can use the q.back. So this is how you can check the back element of the QE. So back element is nothing but 4. So obviously this should be printing the 4, right? So 1, and you can see 4, right? So how can you print the element inside the stack? So just you need to copy this, the same technique that I'm using in the stack. So again, while loop. So while Q is not empty, so you're going to taking the front element, then you're going to pop it, and after that you're going to run the code. Now if I run the code, okay, we got error because this is not S, this should be the Q. And if I'm trying to comment out all this line, and if I now run the code, you can got the value again has dot pop. So that should be Q. So Q.pop. Now you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is how you can actually access the value inside a QE, and also you can print using the while loop, right? So this is all about the QE. So now we're going to discussing about the another STL library that's called SAT. So SAT is nothing but one kind of data structure which one store the unique element. So in order to include it, you need to use here the hash include and the SAT, right? So in order to initialize the SAT on your program, you need to use the keyword that's called SAT. So let's say SAT, you need to give it your data type. So let's say integer and your name. So let's say S. So if you're trying to add the element inside your SAT, you can use here the method that's called as.insert, and you need to give the value. So set, so let's say you're giving here 5, 4, again 5, again 5, again 5, then 4. So it will give you the answer as the 5 and the 4, because the set is actually taking the only unique element, right? That's mean one element at a time. So let's say I'm going to copy this and I'm going to pass it here again and again, and I'm going to give here should be, let's say, 2, right? So the output should be the 1 and the 2, right? So why? Because the set is taking the unique element. So if you're trying to print it out, I can use here the for each loop, then I, then s, and I'm going to print here the c out, the I. So if I'm trying to print it right now, and if I run the code, obviously I got the output of the 1 and the 2, right? So see, 1 and 2, because the set is used for taking the unique element, right? So well, so this is how the set is actually work in the C++. Now we are going to discussing about another STL library that's called the map. So let's say I'm going to include here the map. So map is actually using the key value pair. So let's say I have one value. Let's say I'm going to comment out those lines. So let's say I have one value, let's call my name, and let's say another name, Misho, let's say Chetty, and let's say the key value of the Chandu is 1, then Mishu, let's say it have the 2, and the Chetty it have the 3, right? So let's say if I'm trying to access the value of the Chandu, I need to call the 1, right? That's called the key value pair. So map is actually working like that. So you need to give here one key, and based on the key you need to also give here the value. So let's say I'm going to initialize here one map, so which one having the value like that. We have one integer and we have also one string. Then I'm going to give here my map should be the m, right? Now I'm going to add the value inside my map. So how can I do that? I can use here m, um, and the key, so let's say key is 1 again, and I'm going to give here one string. So let's say my name Chando. Now if I'm trying to print it out, so how can I do that? I can use here the for int, okay, for it should be the auto I in m. Now if I'm trying to print it out, let's see out I. See one thing, I got some error or not. If I run the code here, now you can see I got some error. If you're trying to access the element from the map, so this is the first index and this is the second index. So let's say I'm going to access the string. So this is nothing but second. So how can I do that? So I dot first, right? So this is how you can access the element from the map. So you can see here 1. So 1 is nothing but keep here the, sorry, it should give you the key value, key number. So if I'm trying to access the second one, I mean the string one, you have to use here s dot second. So this is how you can get the value of the map. You can see here Chando is actually printing here. So you can also give here, let's say I'm going to give here 2 and also 3 as well. So let's say 2 and the 3. So now if I am trying to print all the value, so let's say give here the Mishu, and let's give here the Choiti as we discuss on the examples. So we run the code here, you can say Chandu, Mishu, and Jyoti are printing as well, right? So you can also print the index number, or I mean the key number of the map. So how can you do that? You can use s dot first, then the endl, right? So if I run the code, you can see 1 Chandu, then 2 Mishu, and 3 Jyoti, like that. So this is how you can use the map in the map in STL of C++. So you can also insert in another way. So let's say we can use here the m dot insert, and inside that you have to use the curly brackets. So let's say I'm going to add here the 4 and another name. So let's say give here another name, let's say Dhar, right? So if I run the code here, so this is how you can also insert the value. Okay, and to also give it a semicolon. This is not a Python programming language, it's C++, right? Yep, you can see here 1, Chando, Mishu, Chaiti, and Dar, right? So this is how you can actually insert the element in the map also in another way. So you can also use here the erase method and also the count method on the map. So this is your task. Just go on the Google and search on the documentations how the STL map is actually work. All are available on the internet, right? So that's it. Now we're going to discuss about some STL algorithm in the C++ that is already available. So now let's discuss about that. So now we are going to be discussing about the STL algorithm that is available inside our external template library. So first you need to include the algorithms. So these algorithms. So the first algorithm that we're going to be discussing about, that's called the binary search, right? So there are two searching techniques are available in the DSA. Number one is a linear search, and another one is called the binary search. So in linear search, you don't need to sort the array, but in binary search, they make sure that your array should be in the shorter way, right? So the time complexity of the linear search is nothing but big O of n. So whereas the binary search algorithm time complexity is nothing but log n. So which one is more far better than linear search? Because in linear search, you traverse the whole array, right? So let's say I'm going to declare here one vector. So with the data type of integer, and let's say I'm going to put here some value. So let's say pushback. So I need to push the value in the sorting way so that I can use here the binary search. So let's copy this out, and I'm going to paste it. So let's give here 3, and let's say give here 5, and let's give here 7. So I'm going to searching the 5 value, that 5 is available in my vector or not. So for that I need to use this binary search method, and inside that I need to pass here my begin value and the end value. That's it, begin and the end, and also the value that I'm going to search. Let's say I'm going to give here 5. So if the value is 0, that's mean this value is not available. If the value is 1, that's mean this value is available in my vector. Because this binary search functions, or you can say method, give me the boolean output, right? So if I run the code here, you can see we got the output as a 1, right? That's when the 5 is available inside the vector. So if I give it 2, it's not available. Obviously it gave me the 0, right? So this is how binary search actually work on the STL. Now we're going to check that how can we get the maximum value of the two numbers. So let's say int a, and let's say int b, right? So let's say give here int a is 12, and let's say 15. So the maximum value should be 15, right? So if I'm trying to draw that, you can use here the built-in method max and a comma b, so it will give me the maximum value, right? So if I try to run the code, obviously you can get the value of the 15, right? So this is the maximum value. So if I make it minimum, so I'm going to copy this out, and I'm going to paste it after that. So this should be the minimum. Now if I run the code here, and you can see 15 and 12. So 12 is the minimum number and 15 is nothing but the maximum number. So you can also swap them. So let's say I'm going to swap them. So let's say swap. So you can use the swap method, and I'm going to give a comma b. So a comma b will be swapped. So now if I'm trying to print the value of a, so the first time the value should be the 15, now it's swapped. So now a value should be converted into 12, right? So I'm going to comment out those lines, and now if I run the code, and you can see a value is nothing but 12. That's when the swap is working very correctly. So you can also use the reverse method in order to reverse one string. So let's see how can I do that. So let's say give here one name. So let's say string name. Let's say give here my name, Chandu, right? So I'm going to reverse it. So for that I need to use this reverse method. Then same name dot begin and the name dot end, right? So now if I'm trying to print the string, so it will give me in the reverse order. Again, cout name, then handle. So it will give me the output in the reverse way. See D O, like that. You can see there the output in a reverse order. So this is how we can also reverse on string, just using one simple reverse method, right? So now we are going to see that how can we rotate one vector also. So I'm going to rotate this vector. So let's say we're going to use this method, is called rotate, and I'm going to give here b dot begin, right? So I'm going to rotate this vector, let's say for one time. So let's say b dot begin plus 1. I'm going to rotate for one time. Then I'm going to pass here the and. So let's say b dot and, right? So now if I'm trying to print the vector value, so how can I do that? For that I need to use the for loop. So I int I in my vector, I am going to print here the I, right? So if I run the code, you can see the value is printed in the rotate way. So if I'm trying to uh, remove this handle so that you can see in a one line, okay, you can see 3571. So if I go up, you can see here 1357. So it will rotate this value for the one time, right? So it will go like that, and it will go the first. I mean, it is rotating this value for the first time, one time. One is go to the back of the seven, so 3571. So it will rotate the one time. So if I make it two, so the two values go to the back, right? So you can see here just one 5713. It is rotating this array, I mean the vector in the two times, right? So this is how rotate actually work here. So now let's see how can we short it. How can you short the vector? So let's say I'm going to short the vector. So for that I need to use here the b dot begin and b dot end, right? So then how can I do that? So let's give here 4, let's give here 2, let's give here 0, right? So if I'm trying to short it, so zeros come up, so you can see 0 1 2 4. So now you can also apply the binary source, right? You can apply the binary source after shorting. So this short method is actually uh, using the quick and the heap short and also the insertion short, right? So this is called actually into short that is actually using here. So you can see here 0 1 2 4 1, right? So 1 is nothing but my index number of the 2, right? So this is how the algorithm of the STL is actually working. So that's it for today now. So I'll be back with the DSA full series, and here also the object-oriented programming part is also missing. I'll make here another separate video for that because this is so important part. So that's why I make it in a separate video, in the separate tutorial. So after that, we are going to begin our DSA series for beginner to advanced. We're going to solving more than 200 plus problems, right? So that's it for today now. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial and make sure to subscribe to the channels and don't forget to hit the bell icon. And I'll be back with the tutorial. So till then, take care and bye bye.